Awesome. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank all the panelists and everybody here for attending today's session roundtable. Our company here at Upper Hand, I want to thank all the attendees on the Upper Hand team side as well for joining us. You're probably wondering, what is Upper Hand and why are we hosting this event? My name is Kevin MacCauley, and I'm the leader of a sports and fitness technology company that delivers innovative solutions through technology and design to drive world-class customer experiences. And I have seen the emphasis on cleanliness and the health-related impact to businesses in our industry, all of which is certainly important, yet the challenges we're facing as an industry are much bigger than cleanliness alone. The business challenges we face will require smart, strategic, and mindful strategies to uplift your business through the remainder of this pandemic. It's a pandemic that is reshaping our industry right before us. These are unprecedented times, but in coming together, we can learn from each other to adapt our unique business models that we lead. So if everyone around the table has a collective goal, it is to drive forward the purpose, really our why, of giving the entire world the access and means to live healthier, happier, and more satisfying lives by opening your doors for business. Our company works to give businesses the upper hand, and it's very clear our industry needs this conversation. And I hope a conversation like today is one of many to come. So yes, the industry is in crisis, but with times like these, there's also the opportunity to reflect, think, and focus on the fundamentals of your business, the stuff that's made of champions. As we reflect on COVID, what we have learned is that your health matters. If anything, COVID has made this more obvious than ever before. Now, we're not going to solve all the problems that we have in an hour or two, but we are going to make the best use of that time. Today, we've worked to bring you 8 panelists who will be providing dialogue that covers 2 sections. The first, we will begin by looking at discussing the impact of COVID-19 on our industry. And second, we will start the process of defining the strategies that will uplift your business in the face of that impact. Lastly, we will have a Q&A segment towards the end of the roundtable today, and we'll hold questions until that time. Now, the objective of this is to engage in a conversation throughout the event. We want to share collective feedback, insights, and takeaways with each of you following the event. For bios of the panel, we'll share a file here on the Zoom meeting, or you can visit the event page as well. So with that, let's kick it off and jump into the first topic. So the first question we've prepared around examining business priorities created from the impact of COVID-19. I guess we'll start maybe, Kerri, for joining us. What have you seen as the fitness industry has changed? What would be one thing that you'd say has changed in the industry as a whole?
Certainly the number of people that are participating in anything that we're doing is changing. Before the pandemic, I really felt like we had we hit a great opportunity. From our group fitness to our circuit training to our swimming pools to our campgrounds, that there was a great economy. There was lots of available spending. There was lots of new and innovative ways to not just to take in children, but seniors. And I felt like we really were able to hit in every population possible what was relevant and meaningful for them in this industry that really is from the very young to the very old. And now, of course, with the pandemic, as we know that things are changing with that, still trying to understand the science a little bit. Some of those different groups are feeling a bit more vulnerable than others.
Very good. Why don't we go move to Matt? Matt Lane, what have you seen that's changed the industry?
Kevin, in our core product, as we come out of the pandemic, one of the things that's going to dramatically change is what it means to be part of a group class. And that could be a fitness class, that could be group X in a gym, or that could be swimming lessons as we provide it to our students. But group classes are going to change, and we're not only speculating that that's going to happen, but our customers, very similar to what you have up on the screen, are telling us the same thing. We went out and surveyed about 1,000 of our customers and to try to get a sense of what they're thinking as they come back. And for the most part, there's a big part of the population, 60–80%, that really doesn't want much to change at all. They're just ready to get back back to business. But there's a significant part of the population, 20–40%, that says, I'm a little bit leery of what a group class means, and I want to be looking at things like private lessons, or I want to be able to control the student partner in my class and go to a semi-private kind of a model. And they're not only looking at that from what does it, how am I protecting my student from, the instructor and or the facility to try to keep traffic down, but they're also looking at it in terms of the idea of who else is in my class with me. So I think that's going to change pretty substantially, and it's going to impact operations for many months, if not years, in the future.
The conversation around group size is something that everybody here on the panel, prior to today, when speaking with you, the discussion obviously of group size is top of mind for a lot of folks. I'd be interested to hear from others, what you're seeing and hearing as it relates to the size of what is the right size of a group? Going from a group size to a small group training type environment. What else are you guys hearing as it relates to that? Maybe we'll go Charlie Graves with Athletic Republic.
Yeah, I think for Athletic Republic, we're a performance sports training facility. We've always operated in small groups to begin with. We're not a boot camp style training facility. So our ratio has always been essentially 5 athletes to 1 trainer. So the changes for us, our approach, our protocol, our training methodology, our individualized training for each athlete isn't shifting. What has shifted is obviously creating our protocol so that we create more spacing. Right now we're trying to follow a 10-foot radius around each athlete because of the level of exertion. We're trying to create more spacing. So the one is modifying our protocol so that rather than making it obvious and leaving it up, since we do so many teens and youth athletes and trying to leave it to them to self-direct, our protocols are now moving people around in circuits so that we're able to keep the separation. And then secondly would be adding more time between classes for cleaning. So for us, the key impact is how do we create safe spaces for our customers? Because they're kind of a mix of both curious and cautious. I think, Matt said it right. People do want to come back. They're very curious about it, but there are also a level of cautiousness that comes with it. So if we can create and communicate and demonstrate safe spaces, for us, it's not a matter of group size because we've always managed that. It's about having separation and enough, visible cleaning between classes so they know they're coming into a place that's sanitized and safe.
Kevin, I think another part of group size that drives a lot of us to really analyze it deeply is group size impacts economics pretty substantially, because it's the combination of group size and price point that ultimately are going to drive your revenue. So as we've been playing around with various different models on changing group size and also changing safe radiuses or distancing, you are trying to balance price point, you're trying to balance ultimate economics, and then you're also trying to balance the facility throughput, because as you limit traffic in your facility, you can only get so much revenue driving through it per hour. So it's a pretty complicated topic that impacts a lot of aspects of the business beyond just the customer experience. Ultimately, we've driven ourselves to a point where it's a speculative discussion at this juncture, but it really is going to come down to when customers come back and you move to a smaller group kind of a model, you're going to ultimately have to drive price points up to be able to make economics work.
Yeah.
Well, you're driving price points up in the middle of one of the biggest recessions we've ever had. So how much of that price point will the customer bear? And ultimately, will the business model be able to pivot?
I think, throughput is one that's concerning all of us for sure, because your spaces your physical plants are limited. One of the ways that we've addressed it, certainly, like a lot of facilities, we've gone virtual to try to let people that aren't comfortable leaving their homes to be able to still train there. And we've also gone outside where as an entry point for, especially for clubs and teams that are looking to get back in shape, because, you know, a lot of those athletes are out of shape. You know, the centers that we have open today, athletes are not ready to return to the rigors of training like we've had in the past. And so we're moving, a lot of our centers have moved to an outside product that we've launched to be able to help teams and clubs get back in shape before they really advance into more intense training, so that the athlete doesn't get hurt in this process either.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd be curious to hear, Lisa, you know, what you've seen change in the industry as well. You know,
Well, since most of our clients are moms, they are certainly concerned about their kids being at classes and the size. And so I agree with Matt. We're trying to figure out the right balance of class size and then balancing it with virtual. And my guess is we have 3 franchisees. They'll all handle it a little bit differently, but we will continue with virtual classes for the moms who don't want to take a chance and who want to stay home, but also for that lower price point. And then the classes that are going to go back in person are probably going to be more like small group training versus the large class sizes that we had. We're really lucky because more than 50% of our classes do take place outdoors. So my guess is those classes will resume first, but I think we'll take a while before we'll resume any of the in-studio classes.
makes sense. Josh Lyon, with title boxing, are you seeing similar stuff, and what other areas would you see as having changed, you know, forever in our industry because of this crisis?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Charlie and Lisa just said. You know, one of the coolest things that I think's come out of this whole, if we can look at all the positives in it, is the amount of innovation that's happened, right? A lot of brands in the boutique industry have already started on-demand platforms. Tidal was one. We've seen a lot with the exponential brands and the City Rows of the world that have these on-demand platform for this other consumer. But it's allowed us to continue to think outside the box a little bit. And I think that is our biggest, to what everybody else has just said, that's our biggest challenge right now, is this reintegration process. I know the stats that you just had up on the last slide, Tidal, believe it or not, I mean, we're 70% female and higher in some. So the clubs that we've opened so far, we've actually seen, you know, we have limited capacity. Tidal as a brand is actually set up really well to come out of this, because you have your individual piece of equipment, a heavy bag that hangs from a bag stand. Those bags are roughly 6 feet apart. You have your own gloves, you have your own wraps. So there's a lot of pieces that I think we as a brand can leverage during this time, even though we're taking that into consideration and even spacing, you know, checkerboarding our bag stand and spacing people out even more to create additional comfort for the consumer during this time.
Yeah.
And not try to push them outside of their space a little bit. But as exactly what Lisa just said, it's how do we have this consumer that historically has preferred this community environment inside of a group class. They're getting a little bit of that through this innovation that we've all seen in the middle of, you know, your video on demand at home in front of your TV consumer, and you're always inside of a studio or club consumer. And it's just managing that integration back into that process, because not everybody's going to race back in. We've filled up probably every class that we've offered so far in the last week, but we're doing so at a capacity that's, you know, a quarter to a half of what we typically see.
Yeah.
And to Matt's point, the unit economics there then become the challenge, right? We can always say, well, if we just add twice as many classes and keep enough of a distance in between classes to ensure they're clean, then that's one piece, but labor costs are going to skyrocket. So we have to be careful to try to manage and balance this and say, what can we offer virtually to still give people a value, even at a reduced price point, until they're ready? Because at some point they're going to be ready. And I'm curious what everybody else feels, but if it's, you know, 90, 180 days from now is that time, if it's 2 years from now, you know, we just have to continue. And I think that's going to be the challenge for most brands, is not saying, hey, we kept people engaged for 8 weeks, but how do we continue to innovate? Because now we have a new opportunity to bring, not just focus on the two very separate segments that we've done in the past, but to say there is this middle segment that likes a little bit of both. They need more flexibility and where they work out and when they work out, and their schedule doesn't always align with our schedule, but sometimes it does. So how do we create this, new member, if you will, and that's a in-between consumer of what's historically been video on demand and what's been brick and mortar type of consumer.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. And we actually have, obviously most of the panelists here have been through a crisis, not of COVID nature, but through recessions before. I think of Josh York and his story. I think of Crochet and her story with Curves and building a household brand name. And for the last 27 years, it stood the test of time through a number of recessions. I would love to hear, maybe we start with Josh and then jump over to Crochet on the topic. But how do you separate the difference between what's a surefire change in this industry versus what's a fad? Because we can quickly get caught up in a fad and put ourselves out of business just as easily as trying to deal with the real change.
Sure. So I think something that's very important is obviously you have to look at things from a scalability perspective. Things have to be scalable and it can't get boring. You have to constantly be changing, right? If nothing changes, nothing changes. You need change. Change is extremely important. But, I'm a big believer in pain. I love pain. I really like uncomfortable situations. I like to have my back against the wall. I like to run through fires. I'll walk on glass. I do all types of crazy things. I don't really actually do that, but I'm just saying I do. I'll give an example. So I like to take an ice bath every day. Okay. It's 30 degrees every single day. I jump in there. Even in dead winter, I jump in there. And when you first jump in there, right away, you're kind of like, whew, right? It's cold. But then your mind kicks in and your body just becomes numb. So you're okay, right? What's happened here, and again, it's a sensitive topic. I get it. There's challenges. I understand. But at the end of the day, the only person who can help yourself is yourself. And, I've pivoted right away. If you don't pivot, you die. You have to pivot. And there's always, always a way. I'm all about positivity. But, I do believe with the pain, it allows you to become a lot more comfortable. I like to say you go through uncomfortable situations, you get comfortable, right? You need that. So that's how you're able to make it through tough situations. Because what's going on right now, do you think it's really going to matter in, let's say, a year, 2 years when your best person in your marketing department walks in and quits Monday and doesn't even give you 2 weeks? No, it's like nothing. You'll brush it off, So all this is kind of like, to me, is like a test, and that's how I like to look at it. But I started this in 2008, in the worst economical time you could ever start a business. And people are like, you're crazy. You shouldn't start a business. Let me give you some facts. Doesn't matter who's the president. Doesn't matter what's going on. There's always a way. Okay, so when things are dark, there's always light. You just have to find it. And that's how I always like to look at life. But one analogy I always give is you have two people pulled over in a car, okay? And one person in the car is upset and crying because they don't know what to do. The other person puts the car in neutral and starts driving the car, starts pushing the car. As he's pushing the car, someone sees him pushing the car and someone else starts to help. Why? Because people like to help people who help themselves. And at the end of the day, there's always opportunity and you just have to think outside the box. No, you have to think like there's no box. And that's how I look at everything. And yeah, that's what I have to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Crochet, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Yes. So, as a 27-year-old brand, we've definitely had to withstand the time. We started looking about 5 years ago, where do we need to go after being in business for 22 years? And we, started looking at the on-demand market. That wasn't something even 4 years ago that was really big. Now, most brands have some type of on-demand presence. We were able to launch that full throttle in February before all of this kind of started to happen. And that did allow us to have a platform, recorded videos to allow us to launch differently than we probably would have prior to February. So you do have to look on what is faddish, what do you need to, move your company to make those things happen and understand what is a short-term investment and what would be a long-term investment. I do believe because of the pandemic that we will see a lot more on-demand opportunities and options for the consumer. But we all know that the community of the gym is something that brings people to fitness. And we've got to be able to have a happy medium when we offer that on demand, how to keep that community around as well.
Well,
I just would add, Kevin, that I agree with what Crochet was saying, that but at the same time, I think the sense of community and I think the sense of people wanting to be with other people ultimately is going to win in this battle that we're all going through. And so while the virtual offerings and that sort of stuff is important, and I certainly think that there will be a trend, a short-term trend to push in that direction. Ultimately, I think the long-term winner is the sense of community and interaction. And so because of that, our company, for example, we're making our bets on the long game, and we've fought the temptation to jump into the virtual offerings and try to make a bunch of investments in that, because our belief is probably that investment might be a 12 or 24-month investment, whereas the real long investment is to innovate around the actual community product and the physical product. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think through, and each business is different about how they're going to think about that. Well,
going back to that, Matt, community is a huge part of our culture here at Curb. So, our demographic is, they're kind of on that fence. They really want to get back into the club, but they're also, being told, hey, if you're 65 plus, you need to stay at home. So I think everybody is having that challenge of trying to find that happy medium and keep that community, because we definitely don't want anyone to go back to the couch or find the couch during this time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, Kevin, if I could just add something real quick to sort of maybe a little sliver of the science into the sort of social and group fitness conversation that we're having. And so often we look to the science, and this is evolving science with COVID-19. But there's two things I think that we might really be able to kind of capture as our silver lining. We know that exposure to the virus, and also if you've been exposed, contact tracing becomes really important. If we take a little bit of a page out of the education side, so schools, kids programs right now, they're reimagining themselves into what we call cohort groups. And so we may think of ourselves as, okay, one of the new fads within our industry may be that your socialization will be with the same 10 people, at least for an extended period of time. And this way, if someone, God forbid, comes down with symptoms or asymptomatic and tests positive, at least it's just 10 people now, or 9 other people that is your collective cohort group. And we follow the cohort group as opposed to trying to run around after every piece of equipment and wipe it down because there's 400 in the cohort group coming in that hour, in that day. And so it might be something that we consider as an industry.
I think it's an excellent point. And one I think we'll talk about in the second segment, how do you address that then as new cohorts start to come to the surface? Does that change collectively the strategy around, the types of events and services and products you're offering to those cohorts? I want to jump back real quick to something Josh York and Crochet were talking about. Josh was talking a lot about motivation, right, and staying, pumped up through these times. And while it can seem very, at the surface type stuff, I do think when you've been through building a business, you've been through a recession, there's something to be said about how do you identify the change in beliefs and behavior, the change in beliefs and values of consumers. Because there's a lot happening, obviously, with COVID, right? Everybody's, nobody wants it, right? People have had it. But at the end of the day, the fear will eventually go away, right? I mean, COVID, there will be a vaccine at some point. But how do we identify the behaviors that have changed forever? No different than we would identify behaviors and values from a prior recession, or a prior shift in the market as well. So I'd be curious to hear, from you guys. Is there a way you do that? How would you help people that are listening on the call and webinar? How do you try to identify those change in beliefs and values for your target market?
First of all, I don't think that core values change. I think the core values of your clients that were before COVID are going to be after. how they feel about coming back to working out, I think you need to ask. We're putting together surveys for all of our franchisees to send out, asking everything like, just because your city opens up doesn't mean that they're going to come back. Are you planning on coming back the same classes, different classes, same times? What are the things that you're wanting to consider? Is it about spacing? Is it about wearing a mask? Is it about the equipment? So trying to get a pulse, because this is unprecedented and there's no playbook for it. So the only way we know is by increasing the cadence of communication with our clients and understanding what they're feeling. And so for us, we're asking our instructors too, because even if the clients want to come back, the instructors might have their own concerns.
I think it's also going to be very individualized, and probably will take us a little time to sort out. If you think back to 9/11, we all ultimately gave up personal privacy for personal safety. So today, now we're going to be looking for, our own health and well-being, and what are we willing to give up? A matter of convenience, ability to gather in groups. Exactly what that becomes, I think, will be, really up to people. One, the length of time it takes to get vaccine, and two, kind of what best practices are out there. But I don't think there's any question that there's going to be exchange here of people taking their personal health and their family's well-being, to heart when they make the decision to leave the house, and no matter where they go.
Yeah, I mean, bridging between the two of those comments, Kevin, is that about 4 weeks ago, we started surveying our customers. And what was interesting about that is we explicitly split the surveys across our franchisees into a combination of a quantitative, typical web survey, and then also open-ended dialogue where it's just a conversation one-on-one with a franchisee and a customer, very similar to what Charlie's saying. Because at that point, and it continues today, customers don't really even know what they want. And so ultimately, to both points, asking is critically important, but then also being nimble enough to bend as customer attitudes change is just as important. Because the reality of it is that there's going to be a social norming that occurs, whether we call it best practices or we just call it norming. There's going to be a social norming that occurs over the next several months and probably the next year, where we start to kind of understand what is general accepted practices. I mean, just look at a very simple gesture, which is shaking hands, where, when all this stuff started happening, it was difficult it was uncomfortable to walk up to somebody you were greeting and not shake their hand or do something similar to that. Now it's just kind of normed into a sense of commonplace. So that sort of norming is going to continue to occur in terms of our businesses and what collectively is understood as appropriate. So, I agree, asking, but then being nimble enough to change is critical.
I do agree that communication has been key in all of this. And, not only with franchisor relationship, but also from coaches to members. It has been a huge piece of the whole pandemic is communication. And, we are ebbing and flowing very quickly with the process. And I think as a business owner, you've got to understand, going back to what Matt was saying, the financial piece of it, what makes sense for you to reopen, and the questions that you want to ask yourself.
I think, Kevin, everyone's already talked about this. So if we go back to the science of motivation, which is really what you had talked about, how we motivate our customers, there's 3 nutriments to the science of motivation. And all of, probably everyone on this call does them on a regular basis. So the 2 we've already talked about was this sense of relatedness. And that is that group. That is, I'm in it with other people. And so we have that either innately because we're kind of all in this pandemic together, and also we're in group fitness classes together, or we're at the facility together. So that's already there, that one nutriment. The second nutriment is autonomy. And Lisa touched on this perfectly. That autonomy is saying, okay, here are your choices in how we're going to run the business. Which one is best for you? And let the person make the decision. The third one, I think, perhaps, again, if you follow the science, this is where it gets a little gray because we don't have all of the science yet. But that third one is so important to the adult, which is competency. And that competency is asking ourselves, why should someone work out when COVID is out there? And we have those answers. We know that fitness helps with the immune system. We know that it's going to help with your mood. We know it's going to help with sort of all the changes that are happening right now. It creates a new sense of continuity in your life. So again, I think on that motivation side, we're all doing it. It's just sort of rethinking and bringing it front of mind now to making sure people can see very clearly what it is we're trying to do.
Oh yeah.
I would say, on a positive note with what Kerri said, we have a handful of clubs that have reopened, and they've already reported that they've had new members come in and join during this time, which, is excellent news for anybody. But I do believe people are more aware of their health and fitness because of what they're hearing and seeing. Just in my neighborhood, I'm seeing people who go for walks and bought a bike during this time that I've never seen leave their house. So I do believe that the awareness of fitness is a positive for all of us on the call today. And yes, we're going to have to make some changes, but we are already seeing some new members join.
Kind of piggyback what you just said. I really, honestly, truly believe a lot of people are just going to go back. I really do. I did a survey the other day, and I have a pretty solid following, and I think it was like 92% people say if a gym opened up tomorrow, they'd be back. And I love my gym, and so I'll go back to my gym right this second. So I would go to the gym during the coronavirus. I will always work out no matter what, and you got to be healthy. But at the end of the day, I really don't think. The problem is, look, I look at fear as false expectations appearing real, and the media has just got people just so crazy and so scared. And I was doing some research. I don't know if you guys heard of the Hong Kong flu, but apparently that was in the 60s, and about 1 million people died, and they didn't shut down anything. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because business has seasons, right? So everyone's got to be built for the winter. And obviously the winter could be very different in California than in New York, where I'm from. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, I really don't think it's going to be a big problem. I think people are going to bounce back. People are itching. Fitness is very important. You can't release those endorphins and hormones naturally without working out. So as I always say, positivity wins, and I have a very positive outlook on this. So everyone should feel very good and comfortable and just smile, because things are going to be okay. They really are.
So we definitely
Question for you on that. And I, by the way, I align with you in that belief, is that, optimism is going to survive here, and people are going to come back in droves. The thing that we're most worried about is a second wave, or a sawtooth, what we're calling in our company a sawtooth recovery.
Yeah.
Where we reopen, come back, and all of a sudden this fear factor starts to re-interject. And I fear that if that happens 2 or 3 times, it could have some pretty significant ramifications. What do you think about that?
Honestly, I don't even think about that. I don't put those thoughts in my head. I really don't. I hear what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, but I just don't put those thoughts in my head. I just don't do it, because you know what? If it happens, you're going to pivot, you're going to figure it out, and it's going to work out. That's it. But at the end of the day, people are going back to fitness. That's a fact. I know that. Trust me when I tell you, if I had to go to my gym, I would say 100% of people would be back there tomorrow. It's like, it's gotten to the point where everyone just wants to get out. But, look, can a wave happen? It can. But, I do believe when you keep thinking of things and thinking of things, you have that part of your brain called a reticular activating system. And when you actually put it in your mind, it actually happens. So let's just think about positive things, getting back, making people happy again, making them fit, and just figuring the workarounds so people can be comfortable. And when the fear is past, things will go back. Like Kevin said, let's say the vaccine comes out soon. Once that happens, everything will be over. But, until then, positivity all day, every day.
Josh, I love the positivity. And I also think you can focus on what you will do as a plan if there's a second round. Like to pivot without thinking about it is hard. But if now, like, we had no warning that this was coming. And so we all pivoted really fast. But now I like being able to go, know what? If it goes this way, I have a plan. If it goes this way, I have a plan. I feel like I'm building a bridge, a hybrid business that can withstand in person and virtual, and will be what's going to keep us in business for the long run. I want to protect the legacy. So I want to go on more. I love positivity, but I want to go on more than positivity. I want to create a plan for different possibilities.
100%. You got to have a plan. I'm not saying don't have a plan. The advantage you have, I know, because you could take it outside. Everyone has different options to pivot. You just got to, obviously, you got to figure out what those options are. And yes, have a plan, be prepared. I'm not saying don't have a plan, right? You go to war without ammunition, you lose, but you gotta also at the same time align that with saying, you know what? Look, I don't personally think they could shut things down again. I really don't. I really don't think that's going to happen. I just think that'd be impossible to happen again, because it's just done so much damage, and I don't think the president would even allow that. But again, you never know. But I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you.
Continuing on the positive, I do believe the way that we communicate through our surveys and through other methods that we're working to communicate with our members has to stay positive. It's very easy that, our surveys and our communication can lean on and make it more fearful for them to return with all of the new regulations that, we have to go through. So keeping with the positivity, the way that we word our surveys and communication will be key.
I think it's also a matter of confidence. It's just not positivity. I think it's the customer having confidence that we're doing the right things. It's our franchisees that are looking to us with confidence that we're giving them good advice. I think one thing I'm taking comfort in, when we first started this, weeks ago, there was a lot of information floating around. There wasn't some order to it. In the last few weeks, we've seen both industry organizations, we've seen the IFA, we've seen our own research in the CDC, come out with standards. What do you expect from a cleanliness and sanitization standpoint in your facility? So the fact that most gyms and studios are going to follow those kind of norms or best practices, I think it's going to give everybody more confidence that going to a gym is going to be a safe place to go. And I think a lot of that as an industry, that confidence is going to be really important. And whether it's club industry or the IRSA or IFA, I tip my hat to all of them for getting that information out to create these kind of norms and standards that all of us will follow.
Yeah, great point. Definitely good to see all the governing, IRSA and everybody else getting that info out. I think the real takeaway here, because we want to keep moving, is there's definitely been some conversations around potential fads that do exist, right? We want to make sure people understand the importance of cleanliness, but they don't become a cleaning company, right? I think fitness is unique in that prior to COVID, we had digital already happening. There was already a shift happening in the market that was going to take another 2 to 3 years, and you're going to be required to have some level of digital. But then you throw that on top of an overnight requirement to have some level of on-demand or digital with a crisis that is health related. It really needs us to focus on what are the changes and not the fads. So I think a lot of really good points across the board. So kind of shifting as we start to move into the consumer behavior piece of or the next segment, what would be some industry strengths that you guys feel we're stronger post-COVID that puts businesses in a better position to succeed than pre-COVID?
For a lot of us, we now have virtual businesses that we didn't have before. We quickly had to pivot. We've been talking about doing this for years, and then we ended up doing it within days, and I think we'll make improvement on it. So I think that we just gave another revenue stream, another access point for clients. So just meeting them where they're at.
I think they also, it's been brought up a few times too, the role of fitness and the need for fitness to build a strong immune system and to live healthier, because there is this fear of, is there going to be a second wave? What's going to happen? We're all positioned in a much stronger, specifically in the fitness industry, in a much stronger position to be able to come out of this and grow faster and stronger than we did going into this. And I think now's the point in time that we have to, it was brought up, our core values, our mission, specifically for Title, it's to build the most loyal base of members in the fitness industry. And we've talked about that. How do we double down on that mission now, right? It's becoming that much more important, and we want to give them choices to remain loyal, given their needs. But again, we want to build and see this as a huge opportunity to, absolutely come out of this in a much stronger position no matter what the fears are of something happening this fall.
You know, one thing, you guys talk about community, which is obviously very important. Human interaction is never going anywhere.
Yeah.
Robots can't replace that. It's just, so at the end of the day, people need people, right? Everyone's in the same business here. The people business, not the fitness business, people. Everything's about people. So I think that's obviously a huge positive, and that's never going to change. So, yeah.
You know, Josh, I think to capitalize on that as well, we're also looking at a big shift in the labor market. We have a lot of individuals that have been displaced that may not be going back to their traditional workspace. So I think from a labor perspective, you're going to see a lot more opportunities. And from a franchise growth perspective, the brick and mortar locations are going to be able, especially in the next short term, for the next 12 to 18 months, they'll be able to capitalize on some real estate opportunity as well.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. It definitely opens a lot of opportunity for people wanting to get in the space and own, a franchise, own a business, with lowering rental rates and other the benefits of a downturn.
Yeah, I think also, Kevin, one of the things that, as we've already talked about with this new consumption of the digital side, right? When we talk about retention in any program, there's really two aspects to it. First is, and I'll use fitness as the example. In fitness, our independent behavior is that you're retained to fitness. Your dependent behavior is that you're retained to my fitness facility. And so the more I can create that independent behavior where you love fitness, the more likely I am to retain you to my facility. Just trying to retain you to my facility without love of fitness, that's where we kind of head into some trouble. So to the panel's point of having both sort of plan A and plan B, retaining you to fitness and retaining you to the facility, that's a winning game plan.
I think one other thing is, from an organization standpoint, you look at all the information that's been coming out, trying to filter this through. I know in talking to our franchisees, it was overwhelming for many of them to know, which loan program to apply for, who to listen to on cleaning, when can I open? How do I communicate with my landlord? How do I deal with my county health department? All these things that were open questions, and they didn't really have a resource for them except for us as a franchisor. And I look at all the independent facilities that are out there that are trying to sort through this without having a voice, without having a larger group to talk to. I think the challenges in a lot of these, single center locations, was overwhelming. And I think, the strength of having a network, a system in place really served our franchisees, and I think everyone else that's got networks in place to their benefit versus trying to go it on your own.
And Charlie, to that point, you're going to have many one-off competitive sets that, frankly, whether it's because of how they had financially positioned themselves with the lack of particularly the franchise structure put into place, you're going to have a lot of one-offs that didn't survive this. So your competitive space is going to change dramatically as well.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent point. And with everybody being on digital and video now, it makes everyone compete for that digital space, that digital content. Excellent point. Any other comments, thoughts on the strength side of everything? I think
the only other, I build on the last comment that Alexandria made about real estate. I think there is a big win coming. It's been a real estate landlord market for quite some time. And I think, this could shift that position and create more opportunities and better spaces. As some facilities, some places close, but also as no new ones open, and they're looking for opportunities to fill vacancies. So I think there could be some great opportunities in real estate for us.
Yeah. Great. Well, so far, really excellent dialogue there in the first segment. Let's dive into the second session. I think we can all agree, walking away from the start of this conversation, that digital is here to stay. As a technology company, I can tell you we've been trying to get people to recognize that for a while. So in some ways, we're pretty happy that it's been forced on the market. It's somewhat of a disadvantage to Peloton, I believe, because Peloton could have continued on for 2 to 3 years without the market being forced to compete in video. They would have had to wait for people to see it. So with that though, when you offer a new service, we've got to think about the consumer and how it changes everything we offer, because it's not as easy as just putting it on the menu, because that one item on the menu could drive down your number one revenue. It could drive different types of customers, et cetera. So I'm gonna turn over to Dr. Kerri O'Brien to walk us through consumer behavior. We're gonna give a quick overview of what that means, and then get your guys' thoughts on how you feel consumer behavior is gonna change, and how our folks that are listening today can think about adding new services like video, and how they need to think about it with respect to their own offerings.
All right. So really, when we talk about the consumer behavior side, there's really three elements that we talk about. One is that there is this transactional relationship, and transactional relationship means, and how we frame ourselves is, we are a fitness facility, or we are a swim facility, or we are a child facility, whatever it is. And we want to have as many transactions, if you will, around that. And the more often someone transacts with you, the more likely they are to do it again. And so that's a good thing for us to have. What we like to see is to sort of have this product escalation. And I use the analogy of, sometimes we sell a product like a pack of gum, and we think the add-on product's going to be a refrigerator. It's not really how consumer buying works. Instead, what we try and do is we have this transactional relationship, and throughout the relationship, we also want to put some things in there that keep you coming back. And that could be not free per se, because if you're a membership facility, you should have things built in. And so there would be things like the app, or an app that you might download. Maybe your first level of transaction is that $15 evaluation of some sort. And then maybe it's a bigger evaluation. There's more to it. And then maybe there's some 1 hour time. So now you're buying some of that time. And then, of course, we have the small group classes, which might be, again, something else that you might purchase. And then we get into, if you will, the bigger sacrifices. And those might be, and by sacrifice, we mean time, and we also mean money. And so that's a sacrifice, if you will. And we mean that in a good way on the side of the consumer. And then, of course, that premium would be, now we're sort of stacking all of these services. We're adding all of the services on together. And so we really try and put this product line, and we try and draw you through this product line. Remember, every time you have a transaction, a product, an interaction, an engagement, or any sort of relationship, you build that thing we're all looking for, which is trust. And so you purchase something, or we provide something, and we deliver on it, and that trust increases, and then the cycle begins to crescendo from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Kerri. So I want to open it up to folks. Any questions on this particular piece? I think for me, what's really fascinating is, pre-COVID, this example that Kerri gave, makes sense, right? But when you look at decisions consumers make, it's driven by motivation, and motivation equates essentially expected benefit minus the cost, right? And cost being the things that Kerri's mentioned: time, money, emotional investment, sustainability. So how do you see this journey changing in the face of COVID, whether it be people being afraid to come back in, so are we going to be spending more time on the lowest side of sacrifice? What types of things are people doing to get people back in the door? Where a member who's been with you for 5 years, 3 years, they're not going to are they going to jump right back into the large packages and classes that they were taking with you? Or are you gonna have to treat those people like new members? And so we'd love to get some thoughts on how you guys have been looking at the introduction of new services and the product journey for your customers.
Kevin, my initial reaction to this is that I want to make sure I'm not on mute. Oh yeah, sorry. My initial reaction after seeing the model for the first time is that there's a fifth sacrifice that actually is been exposed, and that's safety. And it actually just is the balance among those now 5 sacrifices will change, but initially one of the big things will be the balance between money and safety. And so being able to create safe spaces for people to come back to the world with a sense of optimism, as Josh has put it, is going to be most important. And in fact, many of our facilities, we're really talking a lot about really pivoting some of even the branding to focus on the safety aspect of what we teach and the life skill. We teach swimming to children, but also bridging that into making our facilities the safest places to be, period. And that's going to be through social distancing. That's going to be through cleanliness. That's going to be through a whole bunch of stuff, but really keying on this idea that the fifth sacrifice of safety is becoming really important.
You know, Kevin, I come from this point from a slightly different perspective. I'm a vendor in the franchise world, so my opinion is really more based as a consumer. And it's interesting that I'm in South Carolina, so we're actually opening our fitness facilities up next Monday. So hopefully I'll be able to report back on some of the changes there. But I couldn't agree more with the model that was shown here. I was discussing with my husband, you know, what our plans are going to be come next week, and I have really enjoyed some of the transition into more of like a virtual workout style environment, but I'd still like the opportunity to utilize my home gym, the gym that I've been a member of for years. You know, it's our local community gym, if you will. It's a large fitness facility, and I have to say they've completely declined any they haven't done anything unique. They haven't altered any of their membership styles. They haven't changed spacing. They haven't done anything from a health and fitness, you know, perspective with changing out the spacing of their equipment or their times or schedules. They are operating business as usual. And I have a very sour taste regarding that. I almost feel like they've ignored this pandemic entirely. They closed the door when they open it up back up. Nothing has shifted. Nothing has changed. And it's really caused a shift in paradigm from my perspective. And I'm actively shopping other alternatives to the place that I have been loyal to for years because they weren't willing to pivot. And I don't remember who said it earlier, but at least acknowledge and recognize that there is fear and uncertainty in the marketplace. And if you're not willing to bring that to the forefront, you do have a large potential to lose some of the customers that may have been loyal to you for years.
I think it's always difficult to invest in retention. I mean, it's a very hard model sometimes to pick up. And I think what you've laid out here for sacrifice is really that big retention strategy. I think one of the things that we've learned from this is that we can't take our customers for granted, that we have to invest in retention because they're the lifeblood of our business. And we have to, you know, provide an environment that our people that know us best will come back to. And if we can't win them, then how do we expect to attract new customers, whether it's through referral or our customer acquisition strategies? So I think one of the things that I take away from this is that we have to be better at retention and earning back the trust and confidence of the customers that know us the best.
Kerri, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll just chime in on that. That's been exactly our strategy as we come back into this is, you know, how do we give our existing memberships or our existing members the opportunity to focus on them first before we launch a heavy campaign. But we have shifted into, here are the things, we have new system standards in place and mandates countrywide that as far as protocols of how to handle first-time guests and how to go through all of this process. But we want to reintegrate our members back in there first and make sure that we focus on that aspect of it is critically important that we retain them before we just push them aside and try to drive the business heavily again, knowing that there will most likely be a big opportunity. And someone mentioned it earlier, I think it was Crochet, but talking about, you know, ours that have opened, they already have people coming in and they're not even in a position today to, you know, in their first week that says, hey, we'll put you on the list of when we're reopening for first-time guests to come back through the door, because the process is different. They don't have their own pair of gloves to come in. There is a different standard that they're going to have to go through. So we want to make sure our processes and practices are in place now with our members and that they're taken care of, that they're given the options necessary to remain loyal to us for the long term. But again, that's going to just help continue to drive this organic spread of awareness of all the great things when brands take that approach of, I believe, retention first of those that have been loyal members for a long time and the changes that we've made to ensure that they're safe, they get to stay healthy, they get the opportunity to have a great workout is just going to continue to compound as we start to shift our focus and strategies a little bit down the road.
Yeah.
I can add to that. One of the things when people have fear is we start cutting prices to make up the difference. And we're all experts here. We provide a great value of what we're providing our customer and our member. So I would just, strongly say, out of this fear and out of these changes, don't start slashing and dashing your prices just to try to stay alive. You have value and we deserve to get back in business.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if anybody would jump in, but I think that's an excellent point. I'd love to hear how people are messaging as their members come back, right? Because if you look at the 4 sacrifices, emotional investment in some cases is probably more important in terms of sacrifice than time and money because of that fear and what people don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know about coming back. So I'd love to hear how people are thinking about engaging members in a way that you're not putting them in a group class with sweat flying on them day one, right? That would be the example of a high sacrifice coming out of a pandemic. So how are you thinking about using different messaging or engaging particularly on the emotional investment side, a lower sacrifice to help guide people back to the behavior that they're that you would expect?
I think it starts with being really visible in your communication. Like we've been saying this for a while, telegraphing exactly what you're doing inside the facilities so that they have comfort in knowing they're coming back to a place that you're taking their concerns to heart. And then when they do come in, live through those moments. So instead of having a cleaning crew coming in at night, we're doing it midday, between classes, we're tasking our teams to clean. We're taking people's temperature as they come in and recording it so that if anybody with a temperature of more than 100.4 on a digital infrared scanner is registering too high, then they're not allowed in until they either have a doctor's notice or they've been quarantined. Asking this, following healthcare professionals' query on the kind of questions you should be asking. Is someone in your household been infected? Have you been exposed? Are you feeling sick? Just some of the common sense things that you would want, but it demonstrates that you're taking, again, back to the value of that value exchange of the sacrifice they're willing to come in. You're taking that to heart and actually doing things from the very moment they walk in the door to respect them so that they can follow that journey of training and fitness, knowing that you're taking the precautions necessary to keep them safe. So I think starting to be very visible both in communications and your actions, because your team's ability to communicate respect and responsibility in this by wearing a mask, all those little things, they're noticing, they're following, they're checking the boxes because they're looking at things to say, hey, maybe this isn't right. So the more you can do to demonstrate your willingness to follow through on these new norms, or as Matt said, or best practices, that taking their concerns to heart really would matter.
Charlie, you mentioned in your comment masks. I'm really curious. Masks seems to be a really polarizing point in the customer base right now because it's contrasting personal freedom with a requirement that's being placed on somebody to enter a business. Are you guys using masks, and are you guys going to require those of your customers as they come to your facilities and classes?
I'll jump in here. I know we've had a couple open, and again, we're following, oh, he had to go get his. We're following guidelines again of, the mask versus face shield. So I know our first one that opened was actually in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we had a face shield requirement. So very similar to what you see there. And again, the challenge becomes, at that point in time, I think the consumers have been actually absolutely fine with it, but how do we strategically tailor what we do inside the workouts? Because it's potentially, 25% more difficult to have great workout, or to go through that. And if we push somebody at the level that we pushed them before they came back, when they probably were in better shape, if they haven't been continuing, and in addition have some restriction over their face, all of this has to be taken into consideration as part of the programming that gets put in place as well. But again, for us specifically, we've been following just whatever state guidelines are in place. And, you know, you'll see members that are more comfortable wearing masks, and we make sure that modifications are in place for those individuals, whether it's a mandate, a requirement, or a suggestion.
I'm sorry, I got up and got my mask. We actually issued buffs to all our trainers. Again, it's not a N93 certified mask, but it's, again, a visible display of us trying to treat them with respect. So having everybody in the center wearing a face shield or a buff to at least protect, you know, whatever their breathing is. And then, you know, we put, 50 or so masks in every facility, so that if a customer doesn't feel comfortable working out without one, we've got one on hand that they can borrow or take with them. It's not easy, as Josh just noted. It is much harder, but it's something that it's available to anybody that's not comfortable.
But to your members, perception is critical during this time, and that's a lot of what the steps that we've taken and put into place. It's like whether this extra step in the process is 100% certified to fully protect you or to kill this specific strain of this virus. It's about, we're putting all of these steps to make you, our consumer and our loyal members, feel more comfortable, because the bottom line is, I'm not cutting prices. We will not. Our what we offer today is no less valuable than what it was 8 weeks ago. And it's important that for the sustainability of this business model, that we continue to believe and buy into that and take those extra precautions to make our consumers feel confident that we're there to protect them, their safety as well.
And to tack on to something Charlie had said regarding communicating with your clients about some of the things that you're doing inside of your facilities, I would encourage you to be a little creative in that approach as well, not just simply the memos or the bulletins. I recently saw one of the places that I frequent usually sent out a email where they had videoed a new cleaning service they had come in. It was some type of spray they were doing, but they actually videoed the procedure happening. Just as something a little more unique. It wasn't simply a memo that went out. It was interactive. You got to see it. And a lot of your clients might feel a little more comfortable getting to see it themselves. It does provide, as Charlie mentioned, an extra level of respect, saying, hey, look, see, this isn't just something we're saying. You can see it. It's being done. And it provides a little extra confidence. And again, it's an interactive, there's some emotional triggers that happens when they see their gym or they see the facility that they frequented often. There's a few emotional triggers that go off when they see it being cleaned, not just being told that it was cleaned.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think you're really setting it up for what we always want to see in an emotional investment is this partnership concept. And so the partnership concept is, I'm going to take responsibility for communicating to you, and you take responsibility for consuming the communication. And on the cleaning side, I think we want to make sure that we, as much as we show how much we're cleaning, there's still a lot of personal responsibility to wash your hands and stay home if you're sick. And communicating that on the regular, and that is, as everyone has mentioned, that is the respect, and that emotional investment in that partnership is it's just a way easier way to present ourselves.
Yeah, Kerri, I'm going to jump in here and ask a business question for the people that are listening. What have you seen people do as it relates to taking video and applying that to this particular model, right? We've all been operating in the last 30, 60 days on digital only, but now people need to be thinking about where does that fit in their product life cycle, in their menu of services that they offer. I would be curious to hear what you're seeing with respect to how people, are thinking about video, so that those that are listening can maybe take away some ideas on how to implement that as well.
Yeah, I would tell you, as we talked a little bit earlier about sort of this behavior and how we get people into a behavior, we often think about fitness or even education and even sometimes retirement funding in two terms. We think of one as event and the other as occurrence. if we can move our industry more towards occurrence, so going out and getting and walking and then going and getting in a 30-minute workout or going and swimming for 25 minutes versus on Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to spend 3 hours in the gym. The event concept doesn't really work that well. The occurrence concept is really what we look, it's those small little bite sizes of behavior that we really know people will stick to. They're more likely to be retained to that. And so if we get really smart on our member journey in that strategy, it's sort of like if you've seen education right now, drip learning is the biggest and latest and greatest thing in education. These are 3-minute pieces of drip. So how do we take that concept and apply it into the fitness industry of, okay, how do I digitize this, gamify it, such that I'm creating this journey that is really small little snippets of it, not these big committal events that we're trying to get to.
You know, and Kerri, I think that something else that's interesting, I think it was Lisa who mentioned it earlier, that a lot of businesses have changed their general business layout where there is going to be a greater opportunity to work from home and you know, virtual work hours. I think that's equally going to provide more opportunities for those little occurrences to happen. The little email that's, you know, stand up and take a 30-minute walk, congratulations, you know, Weight Watchers points, whatever the case may be, but you're able to work inside of a more flexible schedule where previously we were kind of stuck to before work, maybe during lunch, and then after work. And it was very crowded. There was a lot of you know, rigid lines around that. There's some fluidity there that I think is going to be very beneficial in the fitness industry. And particularly with those little occurrence, the baby milestones that help create habits and healthy lifestyles for the future.
I think, Alexandria, you're also hitting on something. As much as there is this silver lining of flexibility for fitness, also as the fitness industry, we also have to think there's a lot of flexibility for people to make bad nutritional decisions now, much more frequently than before. And it's, you know, fuel is great unless there's too much. And so I think we're at that point where, again, that sort of drip learning and competency around fitness, this may be a real great opportunity as an industry to, you know, get over that line into really helping to coach people on the discipline, not just around being fit and lifestyle fitness, planned fitness, but also those nutritional requirements.
Absolutely.
Yeah, has anybody on the call, on the panel today looked at how they're going to implement video when we open back up, you know, so that offering is a part of your in-person offering as well? And where on here, you know, does that fall?
We've had video as a component for our training because we use it for analysis. It becomes a critical point for anybody that you're trying to teach. We're all such visual learners that if you're trying to teach running mechanics or movement skills, we use video regularly in our facilities to help as a teaching tool. But it also becomes a sales tool. You know, if I spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes with an athlete when they first come in, capture them on video, work on their running mechanics, and then show another video, the parents see the difference and we're able to use it for sales. So in that sense, we use it for that video element as part of our ongoing communication and reference for the athlete's development. You know, we've also been encouraging our network as they've opened to be able to capture video of people back in the facilities to show that people that, hey, we're respecting social distancing, that the place is clean, that we're open, that there's activity and vitality there, and that you need to come in and join this as well. So I think video becomes a very important component to this, both in social media and for us in performance improvement.
We had video as a complement to some of our programs, but this is going to look real different post-COVID. So as soon as COVID happened, we quickly pivoted and all of our franchisees are doing live streaming classes, and we put together this virtual village. But we're now looking at one of the platforms and we're going to be doing video on demand where we have the best of the best instructors and content, but we're also leaning towards using a lot of our advisory members. So we're able to go deeper on expertise with nutrition, with mindset, and some other things that we weren't able to do in our classes, giving additional value to our clients. And we're trying to create as much value as we can for the franchisees so they don't have to lower any prices, and so that we're providing more value for our clients, whether they're showing up in person or just taking advantage of the virtual offerings.
Lisa, what steps did you take, or are you guys taking to look at, where video should fall in the overall sort of pricing and menu of what you guys offer?
I mean, we've been doing a lot of research, and calls like this are great. And, looking at, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. And so I love being able to speak to other franchisors. I've already reached out to a couple of people on the call to say, hey, we want to learn from modeling. I think there's ways that we can learn from each other. Looking at the schematic you were talking about sacrifice, what we're going to be recommending to our franchisees is that there's maybe a lower price if you're just doing the virtual village alone, and then a bundled price when you're doing it all together, so that there's kind of something for everybody. What we're really working on right now is we want to make sure that what we're creating is not just a benefit to the home office, but a benefit to all of our franchisees. And so whatever we can do to create a revenue share for them, so that their clients, that they're making money off of what we're selling.
That's great.
I mean, we've done that too historically. We've had a live video on demand platform since December of 18 at this point, and done a share. But we also, franchisees, some that may have been hesitant in the beginning to say, no, this is competition with who I'm trying to be, now have seen the value, because honestly, for a lot of them, it's been a big portion of what's kept their members engaged. And we talked about it earlier about visibility as you get opening, and our goal was to never lose visibility through this process. And whether it's video on demand that's being supported at a national level through our sports center and corporate offices, or whether it's live Zoom workouts and Facebook Live and Instagram TV workouts, and to make sure that we stay visible there. But now that they've seen more of this importance in tenure and how it can impact their loyalty of that membership base, it's even trying to pivot again to say, how do we get our system behind it even more to drive more success of this? Because long term, it's going to help them drive more tenure out of their membership base. And I also, in the same position, I want my franchisees to have the biggest possible impact out of it as well, if it's something that they're getting behind and pushing. But I think the great thing too about these platforms, and now that they exist, is you do have this brick and mortar member. We have people coming in, and specifically at some of the brands that I obviously work with closely and work for, is making sure that that sometimes that onboarding process is one of a lot of closer contact, right? Whether it's something like title, it's here's how we're going to wrap your hands. So it's leveraging this kind of onboarding for new guests and first time guests, so that way we can limit a lot of this physical touch and interaction. They become more comfortable with exactly what they're going to experience when they walk in the door. And the byproduct for us as a franchisor is these videos are consistent. It kind of makes sure the franchisees actually follow up and deliver that high quality and high level of experience for all of those guests, members, everybody else alike. So I think there's a big opportunity there to say, now that the platform's there and it works and it's built, and we have a more buy-in and behind it, is how do we continue to leverage it just to make everyone's process easier along the way.
For us, I think we've taken a little bit different approach to this. Our mantra is one size fits one. And so our video content, our video elements from a home standpoint are trying to interact and connect the individual with a coach. So a big part of our business is assessing the athlete's strengths and areas for improvement, because ultimately they come to us because not just to get fit, but to get better. And so if we're going to help them get better, we have to understand what areas we need to work on. And so utilizing video, motion capture, kind of dummy down motion capture technology to be able to assess performance, to identify what movement patterns they're demonstrating, so that we can identify, are they weak in their flexion? Are they, do they have good movement patterns that we can then track? Are they susceptible to an ACL injury? things like that we can use video for diagnostics and then feed that to our trainers so they can help make better recommendations, interact with their clients, and then hold them accountable. So that this mass customization is about standardizing the platform, standardizing the workouts, standardizing the algorithms so that we can add the high level of customization, athlete to coach, athlete to trainer, so that they can get more value. And so, this has been in the works for us for a while. This is certainly accelerated. It's not out in the market yet, but it's where we're heading is not corporate driven video content, but really interactive content that's going to hit one size fits one.
Another place that I think video content likely being utilized a lot more than previously is in development for a franchise brand as they're looking to grow across the country. I know for one brand, one has taken what would traditionally be a live and in-person, usually 2-day long discovery day, where there is a lot of interaction and we're going out to dinner and we're rubbing elbows, for lack of a better term. That is completely removed, not only from the safety element of people are a little gun shy on flying right now, and also being in an environment, in a space that they don't know a lot about. We're really leaning on Zoom to help us inside of the discovery day elements, and it's gone really well. We're finding some really creative ways to still, as Charlie mentioned, deliver very customized content to potential franchise or potential franchisees, and utilizing things like, we've got a brand that's in the food industry, sending them little meals at lunchtime. If we've got a workout or a athletic fitness concept, doing a live workout with them during a discovery day. So I think we're needing to integrate this video content in many different places inside of our businesses right now. But it's for the best. We were talking internally about, once this blows over a little bit and it's a little more commonplace to jump on an airplane, still allowing this video element for maybe some individuals where it doesn't make sense for them or timing's off, opening up more opportunities to include a greater number of individuals in discovery days, where previously we would have said, nope, you can't make it in public or in person, you're not coming. I think we're all opening up a little bit more to allowing this technology to replace the handshake, if you will.
Yeah, and Alexandra, what is a discovery day at a high level?
So a discovery day inside of a franchise concept, it could be a meet the team day, or our brand calls it a disco day. Everybody calls it a little something different, but it's a place where a prospective franchisee for a brand, so somebody who would like to be an owner of a franchise brand, comes in and is looking really at the deepest dive in at least our process and our practice. This is the day that they get the deepest dive into everything from marketing, operations, technology. They meet the team. This is the chance for traditionally the founders or presidents to meet the potential franchisees and see if there's a solid cultural match there, the mission and vision of both the potential franchisee and the franchisor line up, kind of the final interview, if you will. And again, traditionally that's a maybe 2-day process where there's a lot of education involved, a lot of presentations, PowerPoints, etc. That really could get quite droning. And now we're incorporating a lot more video. We're doing some fun interactive things. We got very creative to try to keep Zoom exciting, and now I'm really excited to see what happens when we're back in person and we get to be face to face and still can utilize some of these fun things we came up with when we're actually face to face. So I hope that explained it okay.
No, it did, absolutely. Are other panelists doing something similar on a discovery day? Other activities that might be helpful for those listening to organize something similar?
We've done the exact same thing. Honestly, our cadence has gone up considerably. I mean, it's typically it's been a once a month thing. Historically, candidates fly in, commit time. It's at least a couple of days, as Alexandra mentioned. But now it's happening every other week, at least, if not more, with increased number of candidates. So it's actually, and I know historically during this time, when you look at trends, right, we see a spike typically in times of recession. We see spikes in franchise sales as well. And, as a brand, and I know Josh mentioned it earlier, we started in 2008 in the middle of a recession too, and grew quickly. as the corporate execs and anybody else are just looking to kind of hold the keys to their own future and control that a little bit more versus working for somebody else. So we've done more discovery days in the last 8 weeks than we've done in the 4 months prior to. And they've been great. And candidates are still moving through the pipeline as we go through this process. They still feel comfortable. I mean, we've always viewed it as discovery day as a point in a position where, 95% of their questions have probably been answered by the time they come to discovery day. And it's just a matter of, are you the right fit? We have to get married at some point. So we got to be comfortable dating you and doing some of these things and going through this process. And to your point, culturally, so it's a good fit long-term as a brand. So I've had great success with virtual options, and it's 5-hour Zoom meetings, and honestly, great response from candidates, highly engaged throughout the entire time.
And Josh, I think you bring up a unique point, something that we found and we were having to be really careful ourselves with is people are bored. Frankly, people are bored right now. So they are moving really quickly through a franchise development process. And we've really had to temper some of our candidates. To Josh's point, there's more now than there ever was, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've taken all the steps that need to be done in order for them to be a franchisee. So we're really trying to temper not only ourselves, and it's easy for franchise development folks to get excited when a candidate's at the point that they're ready for discovery day, or they think they're ready for a discovery day. And we've made it really easy, making it virtual. You're not buying plane tickets. You don't have to organize who's keeping the kids and get your wife out and take time off of work. You just made this really, really easy. So I do think the franchise development space is altering a little bit as well, where we're kind of moving the discovery day into maybe a slightly different position inside the process and putting up a few guardrails around it so that it's still a very protected portion. It's a highly coveted place to get to go to. This isn't something that anybody in the pipeline, we don't open up the kimono for just anyone. You really have to hit those steps. And I couldn't agree more with Josh. Everybody's lined up right now. And like I said, they're just bored. We've got to make sure that we keep that protected, because we're getting married, and you don't just want to marry anybody. It's a terrible choice.
Yeah.
And to that, if I can ask you a question too, just on that, is there, there's obviously components of a typical discovery day that we're missing, and I know some of the brands obviously that we've worked with similar brands, but when you get into something, let's say in the fitness industry, it's great to say the first interaction, hey, we're going to go take a class together. And after that, we're going to have this similar experience as we walk through that. So some of those components are missing of that community and human interaction. But is there a need to race back to in-person discovery days, or what are your thoughts on timing and need, I guess, long term?
I think we kind of have adopted a little bit more of a piece it together as we go. So for instance, some of our brands, we have everything from service-based brands to brick and mortar. We have some food service industries. We have some in the fitness space. Everybody's going to have a slightly different need. We have found some insanely creative ways to handle a few pieces. So for instance, I'll name drop Raw Juice. We had a wonderful virtual day a couple of weeks ago with them, and they brilliantly shipped out juices to all of the candidates, and we did a live tasting on Zoom. And it was so much fun. I think it was just as much fun as it would have been virtually, because you got to see everybody's expression, and you saw kids popping in and they're like, Dad, can I try it? And it was, it just created a little bit more of a family environment. So there's certain elements that I think the video brings in that others don't. But I also think that the in-person meeting, for instance, Clean Eats is one of our brands. And while they're able to send meals out, and you can obviously taste the meals and get a little bit more experience with the brand that way, they're missing getting to see the actual cafe. Some of them may live, hours and hours. It is the plane ride to the nearest cafe for them. So there's pros and cons, obviously, to the virtual discovery days. For some, there's not as great of a need to rush back to the in-person, whereas others, as soon as we're able to, we will leave the option up for somebody to do both. And Clean Eats is one where people enjoy getting to go into the cafe. They enjoy getting to see how things are set up. They enjoy getting you know, to have that sit down at the cafe, see and feel what it's like. You just don't get the same vibe doing a virtual walkthrough that way. But again, you know, I think we'll offer both for the foreseeable future. That's kind of our plan right now, is to give people the option. And that also feeds back to what we were talking about before. There's going to be different levels of concern for everybody. There's going to be some folks that next week when they open up South Carolina, the first place they're heading is the airport, and they're going anywhere and everywhere they can. And there's other people that aren't going to leave their house again for another 3 months. So we don't want to lose a candidate based on our inability to offer both options.
Yeah. Let me ask that question to the group in a different way. Have people thought about doing an education session in person about video? You know, everybody here, you know, has launched some type of on-demand or digital, and obviously the idea with the roundtable, you know, sharing ideas, and if they're bad, we shoot them down. If they're good, we dive into them. But given there's different age groups, there's different types of technology. It seems to me that, you know, we're hiring full-time staff to clean the facility, and they're going to be standing there with the mask and the, you know, the spray when people walk in the door. But what about an area of the business where, you know, somebody can go to learn about all the video, you know, all the stuff you're doing on digital, and if they don't know how to use the digital, or if they didn't even know you were offering it in the shutdown, that obviously is a separate marketing problem. But how are people thinking about, you know, educating your consumer on digital offerings that you have, which also I think de-risks your business, right? If there's a second wave, I would certainly be spending a lot of my time in the short run figuring out my video while we're also opening back up, or my digital offerings as a part of that. So I'd be curious to hear thoughts on that type of idea, and if you're doing any type of education like that today when people come in the door for video or other services.
Kevin, we have made some videos on how to use our app and different pieces and parts of the digital aspect of our business, and sent those out in email to our members. And then we also have done a lot of training with our franchisees through our learning management system. As Alexandria said, you know, people are bored. This is a great time to not only train franchisees, but for franchisees to be able to train their staff for the ones that they've kept or need to offer some hours to on a daily, weekly basis. You know, meetings like this is a great opportunity to continue not only the community amongst members, but most importantly, your staff and the business owner. So we've used Zoom that way. And other, like I said, we have a learning management system that we've used.
I'll build on that too for a moment. We've been using probably 3 to 4 days a week. We've been holding 30-minute educational sessions for both business and our trainer development, and then using that and parking it into the LMS or the learning management system afterwards. But those that attend live then be able to have some Q&A. I think it comes back to, especially to the franchisee that's somewhat isolated, trying to build that community within your own organization, trying to instill cultural values, trying to stay connected at this time when all of us are the most stressed. And so we found that education and development of our internal groups helps us build that relationship and continue the continuity that we need to be excellent at what we do. And so video is a big part of it, whether it's Zoom or pre-recorded content that we're delivering and then parking into the LMS system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think with the different age groups, obviously, you know, younger age groups, it's not going to make probably as much sense to sit down and talk about technology, but, you know, older age groups and those folks, for me, if I look at this, you know, this life cycle here that Kerri walked through for us, you know, what are those little things to get people in the door, right? We can't forget that it's still a big issue for people with this pandemic to walk inside a facility, you know, to even go outside. So if we're trying to get all those little transactions, a transaction could be stepping foot inside your facility. That's a win for the business. And if they do it again the next day, you know, and the day after that, now we're starting to get, you know, those multiple transactions over time. And so if just coming in to take a class, you know, sit at a table and learn about your digital offerings, right? For those folks, could be one of those ways to do that. And Kerri, I don't know if you've seen that with some of the you know, businesses you're helping reopen, or any strategies they're taking to create those little transactions that get people comfortable again coming back into the facility, you know, studio, you name it.
Yeah, we've deployed at a number of the facilities. I mean, I really like to create intrinsic behavior change. I like people to get rewarded because they feel good about what they're doing. But sometimes you have to put in sort of some reward systems. So some of the sort of higher end facilities, if you will, when you come in so many times or when you've done so many things, now you'll be able to get an IV bag. You know, sort of on the house. There are some things that are our core products that we would never give away because you don't want to give away your core products. But there are some ancillary services or goods, whether it's a bottle of water or a granola bar or an IV bag, that maybe you would go ahead and you would gamify for them. So as they do things, recognizing what it is they're doing. And then the recognition side, taking that even further, of course, as many of you probably do with your members. Recognition is a great thing, whether it's on your social media pages or whether it's on your website. What do people like more than being recognized? Recognized as many times as possible. And so how many different times can you recognize them in a digital format? It's a great way to do it. A couple of the facilities I work with, we arrange for our members to have their own avatars. And those are the avatars now that are rewarded because some people just don't like their picture, and that's fine. So again, trying to create that very specific relevant member journey and celebrate at every one of the possible stops that you can, because success will breed more success.
You know, the thoughts on that, things people are doing to get people in the door? Or even introduce those new services? And everybody here is offering some type of digital video, right? Is there anybody that's not currently today? No? Cool. So what are some of the other ways that video is being, digital is being used, and how do you guys see it? I mean, if we start to move towards strategy development, what are some strategies that you guys are looking at with your respective business and organizations to start reopening? If you've been doing digital for 60 days, obviously we know now you're not going to take that away. So what are some of the strategies around how you're merging the video with the in-person experience?
Right now, so our franchisees are doing live streaming classes, and so they're live streaming a lot of the classes that they did before. We also gave them some new formats because sometimes you don't want to sit in front of a computer or work out in front of a computer for an hour or on the screen. So we've given them some shorter formats that the clients have actually really liked, to be able to just get in a quick 20-minute workout. And that doesn't always make sense if you're driving somewhere. Right now we're working on the strategy to figure out how much are we going to encourage them to keep doing that versus what we're going to create at the home office, which is going to be higher production value. The reality is a lot of instructors who are great in person are not great on video. And so it's hard for them to keep the clients engaged. We do have, as all of us do, a lot more competition when you are talking about brands like Peloton and Beachbody, who have multi-million-dollar production value and, you know, state-of-the-art equipment and some of the top celebrity trainers. A lot of our franchisees can't compete with that. So again, we're going to try to create some higher level content on the video side and then be able to really drive down leads for them to build that community. It's always about the hyper local community. So I loved Kerri's board. Like, I think that the video will be our lead driver. I think that's how we're going to get a lot of people and then be able to drive them down to the local community. So we're still tinkering and figuring out exactly what it will look like in the new future. But I'm trying to create more passive income for the franchisees so that they're not having to juggle in-person classes and live stream classes. It's just a lot for them for less money. So want to see what we can do to support them on that side.
So Kevin, I think some of the things that I've seen on the video side, there is this whole sort of new cadre of different opportunities on the digital side. Absolutely, class is one of them. Single one-on-one personal training over a Zoom type of scenario with home equipment, if you will. There's also program writing. So again, get paid for what you know, not for what you do. So write a program for someone based on perhaps maybe their particular environment, whether they are in a community that the parks have opened up, or whether they have their own backyard swimming pool, whatever it might be. Then we move into some of the other menus around the education or the digital side, which education is a big one. And then under education, we have lots of different things we can start to really drip out or send out to people if they sign up for this digital menu. So whether it's the exercise of the day, and you can just pull that off of many different boards, or often we try and have one of our trainers or our performance coaches do it, because now they're also getting to know the different people in the facility. And then of course you have more of the academic, it's not just video now, but you also can have sort of that on-demand podcast, whether it's about ketogenics or whether it's about better sleep, all of those things that we know are more lifestyle based, as opposed to just making sure we deliver some digital exercise. And so it's really looking at who is your membership base, where do we believe their gaps are? And someone said it earlier, our members don't really know what they want. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think we have to offer up maybe what we think might be something that they could choose from and would help them to continue a healthy lifestyle.
Kerri, I have to agree with you. I kind of mentioned before that I come from the fitness space. I'm more of a consumer, is where my input would come in, and I don't know either. So if you ask me what it would take for me to go back, I'm not sure. And I couldn't agree more that I think I would feel so much more confident having a brand that it even shows your concern level, having taken the time to come up with different options and opportunities to reintegrate yourself into that environment, the fitness environment. I would feel more comfortable knowing that a brand's taken the time to give me those options than one that hasn't, one that's just simply said, hey, we're opening up, again, business as usual. So I agree.
Kevin, when it comes to video, and I made a comment earlier, the thing that we worry about on video, and first, we use video as an important piece of our business, core business, and we have for quite some time, in that we do underwater video instruction and analysis in a key part of our swimming lesson program. But right now, building a channel for video distribution of content and virtual kind of learning feels very, very important. One of the things that we're very, very worried about is that if you build that out, you're going to have to maintain that channel as well. Mm-hmm. And long term, play this out 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, will that continue to be a really important piece of our business? Our belief, at least in our business, is that it probably won't be. And so therefore you have to be kind of careful with respect to what you create and how much reliance you put on it. Because ultimately it becomes a maintenance issue and one that takes a fair amount of money to handle. So it's there's definitely a balancing act when it comes to video and a thoughtfulness in terms of what you're getting into.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Matt. I think there's some good points in there. I do want to go back to something Lisa had mentioned, though, as it relates to connecting with the trainers and instructors. And I think collectively as a group here, for those that have a Peloton, people that do in the digital training, where's the instructor? Is it the instructor? Is it the coach? Is it the person at that facility that's the bridge between getting people from the digital back to in person, right? And what can be done to make that relationship stronger between that instructor, that trainer, and your member? And how are people thinking about that?
Kevin, I think one of the things that I would add to that is that Peloton and Tonal and the home fitness experience, they do a really great job of connecting you to the device. They do a fantastic job of doing that. I think the industry, the bricks and mortar and and our intellectual properties. I mean, if we lined up our trainers and their experience and their depth of what they understand, I think that as an industry, we have a vast opportunity to connect them to the smallest and the biggest things. So whether it's, easily we could do a foam roller class, or we could do a jump higher class. Like Peloton, they're just not really going to do that. Where we know if your sports performance, what might be in season, out of season. And so when we get to the programmatic side on the digital, we really get relevant with what our customers are looking for, expecting, and again, making sure that they're getting their relevant goals. The idea of just getting a workout, I think, is not necessarily what, as an industry, we're trying to do. We are really trying to get you to obtain your goals, not just for an hour, but for the long term, whether that is pain management, again, whether it is, trying to correct some instabilities, all of those different things. And we have a real opportunity to do that many of these others who, again, great companies have lots of money to put behind their videos. We really have a vast amount of intellectual property.
Yeah, I like that. And I want to call on Josh York on this particular topic as it relates to trainers. He's got a really unique business, one that's just taken off over the last several years. But he goes to people, and it's the instructor, the trainer that's going. So I'd love to hear from Josh on how you're marketing, how that trainer relationship with the member is working. What are you doing that makes that such a strong long-term relationship that might give some insight into how others on this call could do the same?
So, the problem is people are naturally procrastinators, right? Can't turn on an app, can't turn on a Peloton bike. See, when the Gym Guys van pulls up, we don't really call it the Gym Guys van, we call it the accountability van. People need accountability. That's what it comes down to. Everyone needs accountability. You need accountability. I need accountability. Everyone needs to be held accountable. It's very simple. So from the accountability perspective, that's where you get the W, right? The win. But everything's about people, and we're very big on, our NPS score has been a 94 for what's almost 5 years now, which is extremely high. I don't know how many people are, know what the Net Promoter Score is, but you can Google it. But, we just provide an exceptional service and we go above and beyond. It's like that white glove treatment, and you just got to do everything you can, to treat your clients with the highest level of customer service you could possibly imagine. Like, I am obsessed. Like, I mean obsessed with our clients, like obsessed, absolutely obsessed. I don't think if you got the point yet, I'm like really obsessed, but I'm very obsessed with our clients. So that's extremely important. And, that's how you have a high retention rate. And, my brain's already spinning at like 1,000 miles an hour right now. I think I have some really good opportunities from a video perspective to be able to provide good marketing materials, just from like making a funny video, like obsessively really cleaning the gym and like just like flipping it and just saying something like, yeah, we really make sure our gym is really clean. Like, there's many ways to flip this, to do it in a positive light that, could bring people back, where it's almost like they laugh at it, but at the same time feel comfortable. So you just got to be creative, right? Creativity is very important. And, obviously that relationship bonding is very important.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments on on this particular topic? As it relates to the trainer, I know we've talked a little bit about Peloton and the relationship that people that do Peloton have with the instructor. It makes sense. Any other thoughts on instructors, trainers, coaches?
Kevin, when we first launched My Curves on Demand, it was going to be something that was complementary to our general fitness membership. But because of this, we have made it a standalone with some coaching components for the ones who don't want to come back into the gym right away, or maybe those that have found fitness during the pandemic. So originally it was going to be a standalone or, complementary. Now we have added a coaching component because of that need for accountability and to give our franchisees some additional revenue.
I like that.
So they can have the best of both worlds. They can have a coach in their ear when they want the coach. We're using generally on a weekly basis, but they can also have the time, freedom, and flexibility to be able to use MyCurves on demand at home or wherever they want to do their workout. So again, the best of both.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the other name we probably left out as it relates to people that do a really good job pushing the instructor, just from a marketing perspective, would definitely be Les Mills. I'd say the marketing campaigns there are pretty strong, and really developing that indirect intimacy relationship, that one-way relationship, where the major advantage of it is the probability of rejection is low, right? So I can sit and be called out by a celebrity instructor on a bike, or in a class, but they're not gonna shoot me down, right? And so it's like a really great way to drive that relationship forward. If there aren't any other thoughts on the instructor piece, would love to get just a quick feedback from everybody on a go forward plan. Things that obviously this conversation being fairly short and the first one of its kind. Things you'd like to see. Is it shared surveys? Is it shared survey results? Is it having more conversations like this? And then I want to get to some Q&A from the people that have been attending and listening in today.
I think one of the most beautiful things that has come out of COVID is the way all fitness professionals have been coming together to support one another. I've either been an attendee or a speaker or a panelist on so many different webinars, and it has been amazing how everybody is trying to share and support one another. I've coached many business owners myself who wanted to throw in the towel, businesses that have nothing to do with mine, and I've been coaching them on like cash flow, and we just all have such a heart and passion for fitness and people taking care of themselves, that I think it has really been incredible that competition's been dropped, and it's just, how do we support the community and health? And so I don't know if that was exactly what you were asking, but I've seen it as such a win.
No, absolutely. I would agree with that.
And I just build on that, we, for about the past 10 weeks, even before we went into a shutdown mode, Kevin, we have been doing a lot of work with our franchisees to maintain a really strong level of support and connectivity. And in doing so, we've set up many webinars and different workshops on a weekly basis to be able to work that through with them. One of the things that is striking to me that's come out of all of that is just a level of humanity. And a result of the COVID crisis, where people are just banded together and rallied and understand that we're all human, and we all need that connective tissue and a willingness to share towards a common goal. And I guess I'm just kind of repeating what Lisa is saying, but it's just been really interesting to watch how the dynamics of business have changed in that way. And I think a level of humanity has been brought back into business that we really like, and we're really trying to tap into in our go forward plans, because people need it.
It's interesting. When this all broke, I was at the Unconference, which is a franchise executive gathering, probably 150 or so executives in franchising, all different kinds. And as this all broke out, this was the Thursday and Friday before, the pandemic really reached its the velocity that changed the world. And, here we are. This is probably the last conference held, but because of it, that all of us, there's so many of the people that I connected with there, I've been able to maintain the communications like this through, smaller group roundtables and one-on-ones, and having a support group as an executive well beyond my board and advisors, to have other people in the industry that I can lean on and ask, what is this real? What are you doing here? What about this situation? And be able to, exactly what Lisa and Matt have said, to draw on the collective expertise of others that are going through the same thing. It never happened. Well, it didn't happen for me before. And, but it's been amazing how supportive the industry has been and collaborative with each other. And I've been just incredibly grateful that, other folks have been willing to share their best ideas. And, I'd be willing to do the same.
Yeah, Kevin, I think I'll add to that real quick, sort of on we talk about the going forward and the plan. Yes, this has certainly revealed a number of things around our business, like what is a contract worker? Are they a gig worker? Do they get unemployment? It's revealed sort of how we necessarily don't have health care for some of our workers in the fitness industry. But I think one of the things that is extraordinary to me at this time is that for many years, and I would say at least 3 decades now, as an industry, we've been trying to partner with the medical side and the healthcare side. And perhaps maybe this has revealed that it's not so much the healthcare side that we might be looking at, maybe it's the public health side. This pandemic struck folks who had lifestyle-based really disease, that as an industry, we are best positioned to take that on, whether it is high blood pressure, undiagnosed, diabetes. That's what we're about. And so maybe it's a real opportunity for the fitness industry to position ourselves alongside with that public health initiatives that we see from NIH, CDC, World Health Organization, not just here in the US, but worldwide.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Anybody else? And then we'll move into Q&A.
Again, I can add on and echo what everybody else has said. I think, our biggest opportunity is to continue. I've said this a couple of times, is to double down on who we are and what's got us to where we are today. But to realize we need to continue to innovate to give consumers options. And all of that is going to have a positive impact long-term, not only focusing on retention first of what we've already worked so hard to build, but then driving new people through the door and looking at these other opportunities. And, we've built platforms prior to this and been in a fortunate spot to just be able to kind of leverage those and continue to innovate on top of that. But it's, forced us to rethink of how we continue those moving forward to have a greater consumer impact specifically for our franchisees in our space. But again, a lot of opportunity has come out of this, and we're all going to come out stronger on the other side. And the connections that have been built. I mean, we've got tremendous local stories of franchisees that are partnered with 11 other fitness concepts in a market to come together and offer membership base, the opportunity for every month that they're closed, the opportunity to go get a free class at one of these other 10 fitness concepts. So it's really cool to see what we've seen out of all this, and shows the power of fitness and the impact that we have on people more than who's competing with who and price points and anything else. So again, I think boiling it back down, there's a core reason why a lot of us got into this industry, and going through a pandemic like this has brought out the best, and why we truly got in and started doing what we were doing however many years ago.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. So for folks that are listening, we'll take just a few minutes here. If you have any questions, throw them in the Q&A, and then we'll let the panel answer those questions. Also, if folks have ideas on go forward plans, things that they want to see to help them, please let us know. You can go to the event page, chat with our team. We'll collect those ideas, and we're going to openly send those out to everyone that has attended today's session, so that everyone has those. With that, it looks like one of first question here, what types of technology solutions are people using on the panel that can be utilized to increase user traction and member traction?
Kevin, we've taken the opportunity in our business. We've got an in-house software organization that runs that builds our own ERP systems for our franchisees' use. And that's a little bit of a luxury, I understand, and a little bit unique. But we have taken the opportunity through the COVID crisis to double down on some technology platform improvements around user engagement, and in particular around customer self-service, around scheduling classes, around finding locations, around managing billing and managing customer attendance and skill tracking within classes. That the blessing of this crisis is that it's given us an opportunity to do a lot of the launches that we were worried about introducing in the middle of our busiest season. So we've got a lot of that stuff out. We're in the middle here, literally in the next week, of launching a bunch of new technology across many of our brands that we're really excited about. So I guess the big point there is that we have taken advantage of this crisis to introduce some new technology platforms just simply because we could.
Building on that, we create a tech stack we call BOSS, Business Operating Systems, that all our centers operate now on. And it unites everything from payroll and QuickBooks to scheduling, CRM, you name it, across all the operating systems into one suite. But I think from a user interface, I think the one thing that we're excited about bringing to market, we've had probably the largest database of athlete performance information probably compiled. There's a couple 100,000 tests, athlete evaluations that we've compiled over the years, and we've used it internally to help kind of roadmap our own capabilities, performance, and to track an athlete's development. We've now turned it into an app so that the athlete, when they get their video analysis, they get their data points, they can actually do a peer review. I'm a 14-year-old female lacrosse player in Connecticut. How do I score against my foot speed, change of direction, vertical explosive power, whatever it happens to be that I'm looking to measure against all the other 14-year-old female lacrosse players in Connecticut or across the country? And now that peer capability, we hope, will drive that momentum to say, I want to get better. I'm in the 40th percentile on foot speed, but I'm on the 20th percentile, the top 20 percentile in change of direction. How do I move up the ladder? So those technologies, we hope, will be more interactive to drive more participation and demand.
Great. On the next, another question that some folks have for people that are running a facility, doing larger group events. So obviously on the fitness side, we've got small group events or classes, and maybe this is a good question for Josh Lyon with Title Boxing, because it be in the facility and the bags at a certain distance. But what are some ways that you guys would advise for people that are, more in that facility setting, right? Larger camp size, even if it's not necessarily camp, but where you got 50 people in a group, or more in a business.
I don't know that I have a ton to add here. Again, to your point of, we don't, I'm not in a situation with any of them. It's of shared pieces of equipment or anything else that we have to worry about. So we have the comfort of saying, you are coming in, here's where you're going, being very strategic and structured. And again, I think it's all been limited, at least to this point, by requirements on a per state, local, community, whatever level that says, here's what you're allowed to have. So I think capacity for larger group type of events is probably not, I don't see happening quickly anyway. And again, I think it's the showing what you can do immediately when somebody, that they're gaining their comfort level and their confidence prior to entering the door, and the steps and actions that you're taking place to ensure that you can track and trace and know who's in your facility at all times and know what their interaction level have been with others in the facility, to provide a little sense of confidence. But again, I don't know that I have a tremendous amount to add because it is a little bit different. It's one of the great things about some of these boutique brands is it is coming in and staying in your space for the most part, and you don't have all of this interaction back and forth or sharing pieces of equipment or anything else along the way.
Yeah, and depending on the demographic, I would think that it's more the parents or the adults that you'd have to worry about versus younger kids playing, right? I'd be more concerned about adults in the the waiting room or the tiered tower where they're looking down at their kid, around every other adult, as a way to address that. One more question here. What are thoughts about centralization of the entire industry in a single point to help consumers by reducing obstacles and removing the noise for a faster adoption rate? Not quite sure what that means, but thoughts on having a central location for access to information. I don't know, Kerri, you may have hit on it a little bit, but things like good surveys, de-identified survey data. Some of the surveys we did for this event, we'll be sharing the results of that so folks can filter through by age. I mean, every type of demographic attribute you can think of to help people see the types of behaviors, values, and answers that people might need to be able to see. But any thoughts on that or desire from the panel to start to see a more collective approach as it relates to best practices?
I will say, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Charlie said it earlier. You know, it's your customers are all different, and your facilities are all different. I think we can have lots of templates for best practices, but I don't know if there's a rinse and repeat necessarily in our industry.
That would be nice, huh? Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending and all the panelists. I know we're getting close to that the end time we committed to. I know you guys are busy trying to open up. So thank you again for sharing those thoughts. Our team will be putting together a recap of everything that was discussed today, along with some other materials related to the conversation. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day and good luck reopening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.